silent majorities become silent minorities if nobody speaks up. And for me, making a record was really how you made a statement.
John Ondrasik, also known as Five for Fighting, is a Grammy-nominated recording artist who released several #1 hits in the early 2000s, including a single, Superman, which became known as a 9/11 anthem. Recently, he's come back into the spotlight for his songs about the 2021 Afghanistan withdrawal, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and the Hamas October 7th attack on Israel.
Many in the music business, particularly with Israel, have historically shamed our industry for all time because they're afraid to speak out with common sense, moral clarity. One thing that I think folks don't realize, especially on the right, is how critical the arts are to changing culture.
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek. John Ondrasik, such a pleasure to have you on American Thought Leaders.
Thank you for having me, Jan.
You've written songs about Afghanistan and the withdrawal, about Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, about October 7th. But back in the day, you wrote that the song that I remember that you wrote was Superman.
Yeah.
Which kind of became a 9/11 anthem of sorts.
Yeah. It's surreal, sitting here in New York City across the street from Madison Square Garden. Whenever I come to town, I flash back to the concert for New York. My career was a fluke. I'm a 15-year overnight success. I grinded in the music business for a long time, and when we released Superman, nobody wanted to play it. It was a piano song, it was a ballad. This was the age of Lilith Fair boy bands, grunge music, and it was an anomaly. It wasn't 1977 with Billy and Elton. So Superman was kind of a miracle to begin with, just that it kind of caught on. And then, of course, I was actually in England on 9/11. And like everybody else, I called everybody I knew in New York. I sat there for 10 days, no planes were flying. I landed in O'Hare. I literally kissed the tarmac to be back in the United States. And I didn't realize what Superman had become, particularly in New York City and DC, recognizing the heroes of 9/11. And still to this day, I keep in contact with many of the firefighters and their families. But I think it showed me at a very young age why music can matter. We talk about fame, fortune, hits, tickets, but across the street that night when I played the concert for New York and I saw The Who blow the roof off Madison Square Garden and give all of those people who'd been down at ground zero, digging through the rubble, an avenue to release, to cry, to sing, to scream. I saw that night, okay, that's why it was seeing how music can move mountains, move messages, give people solace in a way nothing else can. So, maybe 25 years later, seeing that song and other songs still connect that way, I think as a songwriter, it's very humbling.
That's amazing. And we were just talking earlier, you alerted me that Five for Fighting actually comes from hockey.
Yeah.
So you were a hockey fan. You were
Yeah.
You were in Toronto in 1993 when I think that was one of the few times that the Toronto Maple Leafs made the playoffs. I remember that. That was my first year of university, and it was a big deal. But
yeah, Wayne Gretzky and Doug Gilmour, one of the greatest series of all time. And in 1999, the record company said, as I said, the age of the singer-songwriter was not happening, so they wanted a band name. And I sarcastically said, how about Five for Fighting? Because I went to a hockey game and there was a fight, and Marty McSorley and Bob Probert, expecting to hate the name. And they're like, we love the name. I'm like, you're crazy. It sounds like I should be opening for Metallica. What's going on here? And to be honest with you, Five for Fighting's probably more appropriate now, fighting some of these cultural battles with these songs.
When I look at your choices of causes, I guess,
yeah,
right, they don't fit neatly on the political spectrum.
Yeah.
We kind of expect them to these days, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the latest three songs, every time I write one, I hope it's the last one. They're moral messages. They're not political messages. Blood on My Hands, the song about the Afghan withdrawal. It's basically, you don't promise somebody to have their back and you abandon them to terrorists. You don't leave your citizens to terrorists. To me, that's not a political message, it's a sane one. With Ukraine, when Putin invades Ukraine, we are America. We're supposed to stand for those, fighting for their freedom against tyranny. October 7th, when people massacre, rape, pillage, desecrate innocent people, that's a bad thing. There's no but. So to me, these are moral messages, and the fact that they're taken politically for many is understandable in this tribal world we live in. But that's how I look at it. Before every song in my concerts, I kind of give a little context. When I talk about Blood on My Hands and I talk about the withdrawal, I say, look, if a Republican president did the same thing, the song would remain the same, only the names would change. But in this tribal world, of course, it's a bit of an anomaly.
How do you see yourself in this crazy world where everything is hyper-polarized?
I just look at myself as a person with a worldview that happens to write songs for a living. We all have opinions, and to be honest with you, Jan, it's a bit of a tightrope for me because I've always had a bit of a disdain for celebrities who get on their soapbox and lecture us about politics as our moral betters, which so many in Hollywood like to do. But there's also this tradition in songwriting and music to write about the world around you, the protest songs of the 60s, of course. So in a way, I guess I look at myself as in some weird way as a modern day kind of protest songwriter, which I never aspired to. But seeing some of the response to our culture to these issues and seeing the fact that many in the music business, particularly with Israel, have historically shamed our industry for all time because they're afraid to speak out with common sense, moral clarity. I think that also gives me some energy to say something because so many are not.
Well, yeah, so does that not make you sort of ultra canceled or something?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. When I wrote the Afghanistan song, virtually everybody said, you cannot put that out. It's cancel culture. And I thought twice about it. And to be honest with you, if I was 30 years old trying to make a career in the music business, I don't know if I would have put that song out. I'm fortunate to be on the end of my career. I have some security. I've never been part of that crowd anyways. But look, the honor of my career has been to perform for our troops. Me and Gary Sinise, my pal, we go on the USO tours, and we wouldn't be sitting here without our military families and our veterans and our active military. So I had a lot of friends that were gutted, disgusted after our withdrawal. And talked to so many after the song came out. It got so crazy that I started getting calls from people trapped in Afghanistan. So I embedded with many of these amazing Green Beret NGOs, Save Our Allies, Project Pineapple, Project Exodus Relief, who were literally saving people. So through that, I met a lot of these heroes. And on these operations, I didn't go to Afghanistan, but I was liaising with people on the Hill and getting to know them. And when they saw General Milley and General Austin come out and say, hey, what a great success Afghanistan was, that broke a lot of hearts. It broke my heart because we expect presidents to do things that can be a little crazy, a little political. But we always thought that if it got really bad, the adults in the room, our generals, would say the right thing. They'd be honest with us. And when they didn't, I think that shattered a lot of hearts and a lot of minds. And thousands of emails from Afghan veterans, from veterans in general. I still talk to many. That stuff is so powerful that the negative stuff, in a way, it just kind of rolls off your back over a time.
Often you'll have a conflict like Ukraine be kind of reduced to, Russia, Ukraine to be reduced to the kind of the geopolitics of the situation, political blame, but it's actually very much real people.
Yeah.
And your point is, I think here, that these are people fighting for their freedom.
They're fighting for their survival. I mean, one thing we're trying to do through the arts, and the arts, I think, is critical in this civilizational culture war, and that's really what it is. It's not Hamas versus Israel. It's civilization against those who want to tear it down. Look, the UN is much of a problem as Hamas, Iran, China, Putin. They're all connected. So one thing we're doing is we're putting together collaborations between Ukrainian artists, Israeli artists, Iranian dissidents, Palestinian dissidents, Taiwanese dissidents, Chinese dissidents, to really kind of make the point that this is all one thing. I mean, you go back to Reagan and it's the axis of evil. It's still the axis of evil. If we try to compartmentalize it, we're not doing ourselves a service. It's evil actors really trying to tear down our Western way of life and the freedom and liberty that we love. And typically with music, you have many artists writing about the world around them, and you can look back in time and listen to them and kind of get a sense of the history. You listen to the music of the 60s, you get a sense of the history. Perhaps the fact that nobody's writing about these issues says something about what's happening right now. And the fact that many Jewish icons are afraid to say anything about October 7th says something about where we are. The fact that so many kids have been indoctrinated on TikTok and many artists are spouting the oppressor, woke, genocidal propaganda. Maybe that does say something about where we are. As someone with 2 kids in their 20s and look at the world they're going to grow up in, that's another reason for me to at least be one voice, having one point of view that hopefully will give others some strength to speak up. One thing that I think folks don't realize, especially on the right, is how critical the arts are to changing culture. We talked last night on the phone about my old buddy Andrew Breitbart, who always said, politics is downstream of culture. So if you don't include the arts, which I call soft power, in the culture war, you're going to lose. And I think we're seeing that.
John, we're going to take a quick break right now, and we'll be right back. And we're back with Grammy-nominated recording artist, also known as Five for Fighting, John Ondrasik. So I know you brought your guitar, or I guess it's your daughter's guitar here in New York, right?
Yeah.
Why don't we do a little nostalgia here?
Let's go back to the future. Okay, yes. My daughter Olivia, who is actually in London as we speak, so she allowed me to hang in her apartment, and she has this beautiful little this little Taylor. Of course, Superman was written on piano, but sometimes it's interesting to hear it on a different instrument. So here's a little bit of Superman. I can't stand to fly. I'm not that naive. I'm just out to find a better part of me. I'm more than a bird, more than a plane, more than some pretty face beside a train. It's not easy to be me. Wish that I could cry, fall upon my knees, find a way to lie, but a home I'll never see. It may sound absurd, don't be naive. Even heroes have the right to bleed. I may be disturbed, won't you concede? Heroes have the right to dream. It's not easy to be me. And up and away from me, now it's alright. You can all sleep sound tonight. I'm not crazy or anything. I can't stand to fly. I'm not that naive.
looking for special things inside of me, inside of me, inside of me. It's not easy to be me.
You know, one line that really struck me was, I think it was "Heroes get to dream too," or something along this line, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. So tell me a little bit about how it is that you got to, end up in Ukraine during the war.
It was kind of a wild experience, actually. When Can One Man Save the World, which is the song I wrote for Ukraine, came out, I wanted to do something, frankly, for Poland. Because Poland, as you know, had taken in 4 million refugees. So I had a friend who's very connected in the Hill and in the State Department. And I said, I got this idea. Why don't we go to Poland and let's sing Can One Man Save the World with the Polish orchestra? She called back in a few days and she said, how would you like to go to Ukraine and sing the song with Ukrainian orchestra? And my first thought was, what? And I said, how could that work? She goes, well, a million things have to happen, but we could get the orchestra to Kyiv for 3 days, let me work on it, start writing the arrangement. And so I did. And she said, and don't tell anybody. You can tell your wife, but no one else. We need operational security. This has to be like a mission. So me and my quartet MD, violin player, were in the back of the van traveling across the country and scribbling in the back of the van on our laptops, arranging Can One Man Save the World. And in the last show, I came off stage and got an email with a plane ticket to Krakow for the next day. And so I had a long talk with my wife that night, and I'm very grateful she let me go. And off we went. Flew to Krakow, got a car to take us to the border. The guy drove 200 miles an hour getting us there, didn't speak a word of English, pushed me and 2 veterans who were part of the production team off. We didn't know what to do, so we started kind of walking the mile to the border, and everybody's coming this way, nobody's going that way, and got through the border. We're supposed to get a car. That wasn't working because all the gas was being used by the military. Eventually, we got to Lviv and boarded a train with some U.S. congressmen, Dan Crenshaw and Brian Fitzpatrick. They let us board their train, which I'm so grateful. And we got to Kyiv. And typically, you're supposed to play underground. You see people performing in the subways because of all the air raids. But we were informed that there's a chance you can perform at the Antonov Airport, which hangars the Maria, the symbol of Ukrainian independence, which is an airplane, flew during COVID, flew the Soviet space shuttle. It's on their army patch. And eventually we were allowed to do that. We put the quartet, in front of this plane that had been destroyed by Putin in the outset of the war. We put me in puddles of jet fuel, blown up tanks. Frankly, still some things there that probably I won't talk about because kids may be watching. We performed this song and shot this video outside of Kyiv. And every member of that orchestra had either had a family member killed, missing, or were on the front lines. My interpreter was an 18-year-old girl who 6 months earlier was a bartender. Now she's in the army.
So, and tell me about the Hostage Square performance.
In the middle of Tel Aviv, there's a big square that they've turned into an outreach forum for the hostage families, in many ways a shrine and a stage for the hostage families to speak every Saturday night. Thousands of people come, it's broadcast on television. There's exhibits, there's even a kind of tunnel that is an example of a Hamas tunnel, and that what the hostages would feel. And you walk through the tunnel and there's this screaming. And so they have all this really powerful, moving, scary, important stuff. Right before I performed, they made an announcement that I'd never heard before, Jan. The announcement was, in event of missile attack, everybody please take cover find a safe shelter and cover your heads. There were 10,000 people there. And I was like ready to run to my hotel and hide under my bed. Nobody left. And so I performed Superman. I performed okay. It was very moving. It reminded me of the concert for New York, frankly. Literally, from me to you, people holding signs of their children who are hostage. It reminded me of looking out at Madison Square Garden of those family members who lost loved ones. And when I came off and was hugging some hostage families, the hostage forum person said, hey, by the way, you need to be in your hotel by 11 o'clock because they're closing the airspace. And it's very likely Iran's going to attack. And this is about 8:30. And my son was with me, too. I said, hey, you guys, you heard, right? They're like, yeah, we heard. Okay, let's go. We got to go to the hotel right now. True story. They look, the one guy, David, said, but John, we have a dinner reservation. I've waited 2 weeks for this dinner reservation. And that's who these Israelis are. They have a way to find joy in the darkest of times. They have this fortitude where things that would make us cower kind of rolls off their back. And so I'm like, well, maybe can we at least have dinner at the hotel? So we go to the hotel, they're all drinking, talking, and I'm looking at my watch. I run to my room at 10:30. I tell my son to get in the room. And of course, at 11 o'clock, I ran a tax. And I call them all. I'm like, all right, guys, they're attacking. I'm in the safe room. And they're like, the drones will take 8 hours. We're at the bar. I'm like, that's who they are. So that whole experience really was powerful for me to see kind of the fortitude and attitude and strength of the Israelis, similar to the Ukrainians. And I think Americans, we could learn something from these folks. I think we've lost a little bit of that.
John, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for coming to visit us. But a final thought as we finish?
I think, not to go fanboy on you too much, but I appreciate your guys' mission and not just kind of pick whatever partisan piece is going to grab you likes that day. I think that really is something that is critical for our nation to get back to a place where we are okay. We're not perfect. We'll never be perfect. But we're certainly not okay. We need to get back to where we are okay. And I think your mission is an honorable one.
Well, John Ondrasik, it's such a pleasure to have had you on.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining John Ondrasik and me on this episode of American Thought Leaders. I'm your host, Jan Jekielek.